Hello, University of Burgundy computer science students and Professor Vassilev. I'm Emmanuel Deval, an alumnus of the English department at the Université de Bourgogne, now living in California, and we're here today with Nicolas Grenié, developer advocate with Typeform. Nicolas, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, hi everyone. Good to be here. Doing awesome. It's a rainy day in San Francisco.
How often is it a rainy day in San Francisco? Maybe this is something we should tell these guys before they try and get a job in San Francisco. The weather is special.
Well, I learned it the hard way when I came here in December. That was the first time I was visiting San Francisco, and at that time I was an exchange in Minnesota, so it was snowy and cold. And I arrived here in December, and it was warm and great. And the next time I came around was during the summer, and I was like, well, it was warm in the winter. It should be warm in the summer. And this is definitely not the case in San Francisco. It has its own microclimate full of fog. So be aware, seasons are a bit different here.
Yes, August might be the worst month in the whole year in San Francisco. So for how long have you lived in California now?
That's going to be almost 7 years, I think. Yeah.
7 years. Very good. So listen, I've got questions from the students. A lot of them want to know the same thing. What does it mean to be a developer advocate?
It's an awesome question because when I was in their position, when I was studying computer science, I had no idea what it was. It's something I discovered when I came here in San Francisco the first time for my first internship. And it was a job that emerged because more and more companies were trying to target developers as the main consumer and the main buyer of the product. And so if you build a technical product, something like Twilio, Manu, you stop me if you don't know those names. I'll try to explain. But Twilio, it's a company that helps you send SMS to your users. So whenever you have a delivery for your pizza and you say, oh, the pizza is about to arrive, the pizza is here, it sends an SMS to your phone. This technology is actually an API and that it's sold to other companies, the pizza delivery company. And the person that's going to implement this is the developer in the end, is the person that's going to hack it. And so the company Twilio that makes this technology, their goal is to make the technology known in the developer space. So whenever a developer will have this issue, they will be like, I know a company, and that will be Twilio, and that's the one we want to use. And so the role of a developer advocate is to spread the word around about their technology, their way they connect their tool with others, and how it can solve a developer problem.
And that's something that I've learned to appreciate is there's got to be collaboration. It's a competitive, I mean, tech is competitive, but the idea is collaboration is key here because somebody is doing something that you can use and then you crisscross, everybody benefits in a sense.
Yes, and this is really the job of a developer right now, the job of someone that does computer science in a company today. It's to assemble all those pieces. You will never build this from scratch. You will always rely on somebody else that did this work. Is it a technology sold by a company like Twilio? Is it an open source library that someone else did on their free time, or is it their main activity? But you need to assemble all those pieces, and you can't do that by yourself. And so collaboration and using things from others is very important, and then on your own team is also crucial.
Good. Well, at this point, can you give us a little background? I mean, they looked at your LinkedIn, they looked at your site. Just, a quick background, your studies, several maybe different jobs that took you to Typeform, travels, you lived in China.
Yes, it was not my fault. My parents decided to move there when I was a kid. And so at 9, I didn't have the choice but to follow them.
Oh, okay. So, because I have a question actually from somebody who did an internship in China and after 3 months still struggling to speak the language. And he's asking if you have any tips on how to get better in Chinese. I guess moving there at 9 years is pretty good. It helps a lot.
Yes,
So
I had
that.
That's the only tip I have is like if you're a parent or you're going to be a parent, it's good to move somewhere else where it's not your native country, so your kids will get to be exposed to a foreign language. And that's the way we learn. Like there was someone that was taking care of us, and we're like, okay, we want to eat this, we want to eat that, and unless we were saying it in Chinese, we had no other options to eat.
Okay. Yes. Necessity being the mother of invention. So I read that you started messing around with computers when you were 10 years old.
Yes.
How did your passion start?
The way it started was I was a kid in China at that time, and they had some stuff happening on the Wednesday afternoon for like clubs, different types of clubs in the school. And every semester you will receive the list. So there was to play tennis, to play basketball, to do calligraphy, to do music, all types of stuff. And someone offered something that was called programming. And I asked my parents, what is programming? And I was like, well, you see what you do on your computer, but now you can learn how to make those softwares. I was like, this is interesting. This is what I want to do. And that was a professor of mathematics who knew a bit of Visual Basic. So it was a programming language at that time. You drag and drop some visual elements to create windows, to create buttons, and then you put some lines of code behind it and it will do something. And so this is how I got started. And soon enough, after 2 or 3 lessons or classes or walk around the thing, I was like, all right, I don't need you anymore. Thank you. I'll do other stuff. But he showed me the first paths. And I remember my mom, she printed the whole guidebook of programming for this specific language I was learning on real paper, because we didn't have the book at home, and then everything in China was in Chinese. So she found it online on a PDF, and she printed the whole thing. And so soon enough, once you start learning these things, you're starting asking more questions, and this is how you discover more things and make progress on your own.
Right on. Now we're moving into the thick of it. It's a question from Rafik and Mamadou, and they're asking, what is the programming language, the one, if you had to pick one, the programming language that you use the most right now?
Yes, that's one called JavaScript and Node.js. So it used to be a programming language that was only meant for the browser. At that time, if you remember, it was just making cool animations and putting snow on a website. Now you can do way more things, and you can use it on the server. You can use it to build mobile apps. You can use it to program little chips that have connection to 3G, all types of stuff. So there is no specific reason why I use it. It's just that this is the one I feel more comfortable with, and you should use the one you're comfortable with, and you will learn through it. It's not a problem. You will learn to go from one programming language to another one, but that's the one I use most of the time.
Another question from Rafik and Mamadou is they are interested to learn about serverless infrastructure. Yeah, go ahead with that one.
Tell me what you think about serverless infrastructure. No,
well,
so
because the site mentioned, I think it's maybe in a paper you wrote or
yes,
in one of your videos, because they were not familiar with that term yet.
Yes, it makes sense, because what you learn in school is it's the foundation, and whatever is happening in the industry is what people are doing right now. So it makes sense that it's not yet in your programs. But it's something that's pretty easy to catch up. The whole idea is that once you have a website, a server, you used to own this, right? You used to know physically where it was. You can have it in your room, or if it was not your room, it will be someone else's room. Until one point, they started with the concept of cloud. So you have someone that will take care of this in a virtual thing, a bit more abstracted. So you wouldn't have access physically to the device. You wouldn't have your own device and your own machine for you and your usage. It will just be shared across other companies. And this is what Amazon is doing right now. Amazon, Salesforce, OVH in France, in other places. And the whole idea of serverless, it's now that instead of dedicating a lot of resources to host a really small thing, you are going to just go back to this function that is the tiniest amount of programming power you can have, and just make it work for this number of seconds that you need it. So instead of having a server that runs 24/7 for just a little small task, you're going to reduce it to the simple function and use it and pay for just the time you used. And this is right now how a lot of things are working. One example I can give is, for example, you do image treatment. So you want to add a filter, you want to change the size of things. Well, you can just make those functions, and those functions talk to each other. It's a bit similar to probably what you're learning now about state machines. So you'll have one that will just take care of turning it black and white. You will have one little function that will just take care of putting it bigger or smaller. And as you chain all those things, you consume less resources and you don't own the server. It's easier to maintain for you.
Awesome. They're also asking, so they've been studying agile methods. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'll say this is what most startups and companies are using here. It's the way you organize the work in your team, basically, and we do this depending on the teams and the companies. We do this with a Scrum Master or no Scrum Master, which is usually a sensei that know more than others about this type of methodology, and so they're here to make sure you follow the methodology. But that's something that's spread around the valley and the companies. In our case, we just do it ourselves. And every week you have someone, you have a team meeting. We don't do that every day. Some teams do that every day. They check on what happened yesterday, what were the blockers, and what's going to happen today. And this is for you the opportunity to to connect with your coworkers and see where you need help and how you can collaborate, as well as updating the person that is in charge of the overview of the project and making sure everything is shipped on time. That's a really quick analogy on the agile methods.
I've got a question from Eman and Luca who are curious to know how often you get to speak French at your work. I mean, there's a lot of French people around San Francisco, as we know, but
yes, I'll tell you. My other issue is that at home, my wife is Spanish. So even when I'm home and I'm not working, I speak another language that's not my native language. But it's very useful to speak more than one language, because turns out for the job that I do, we do have a lot of French customers, and they always appreciate when you can speak their own language. And it really makes me be able to jump and help our customer team, our sales team, to talk to all the different customers, because if they couldn't deal with, like, if you bring a big company, a big French company, it would be what, Peugeot, Renault, all those people, they want to deal in French. They're of course confident to speak in English, but whenever they have the way to speak French, they like this better. And so it's a way for your company to gain some points in a contract, I'll say, having a local there.
You Typeform is headquartered in Barcelona? Yes,
in Spain. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you also have I remember before March 2020, you would travel quite a bit, either for just like conferences or I guess to go to headquarters. Another question from these guys, and I don't know if you actually on your resume, did you used to work in France?
I never worked in France.
You never worked in France. So the question was, as far as you can tell, what's the difference between daily work for a French company and an American company? So
I don't know. The only thing I did, it was contracting in my last year of studies because I had some free time, but I never worked in an office in France. So I have no idea how it works. But I think in the technology world, things are pretty much similar.
All right. Well, we'll leave that one. We'll put a pin back in that one. Fun stuff. Chatbots. Have you created chatbots? What interests you in chatbots?
Yes, that's a good question. And I don't have the Alexa near me, but otherwise I'll bring it here. I got really excited when those things came out. So the first Alexa came out, because for me at that time, I was working for a company called 3Scale, and we're helping other companies with their API strategy. So making sure that the data they had internally was exposed to other developers to build things on top of it. And so with those apps, it was clear because it had no UI, no user interface, that they will have to reinvent the way to consume this data. And so when I saw those things, the first thing I wanted to do was create a quick app to understand how it will consume an API, how it will return those statements to the user. And so I did 2 or 3 apps on the Alexa stuff. Nothing big, nothing useful, but at least just to have fun. One was about startup facts. So yeah, it's like, oh, tell me about Lyft, and it will tell you Lyft. It's a US competitor of Uber. It will tell you how much they raise. It will tell you who are the founders. Like, it will find the data somewhere else and do this. But you have other people that did jokes, joke spots. It tells you a joke every day. So it's pretty fun. The thing that's really fun is the fact that you have to think really about the interface and the way you express messages and how you talk to the user, because that's the only way they can interact with you. So you can't make fancy design. It's more in the wording and the what we call the copy and how you write things.
I'm reading something here about Reyes de las startups. What is that?
Yes, so that's really inherent to who I am, and wherever I go, I want to be part of a community. And so when I lived and worked in Spain for a couple of years, for 3 years. This is where I met my wife, and there I wanted to help the local startup ecosystem. Right. And so we had a regular meetup where people that were in the startup world will meet and talk and exchange. And then came the Christmas Reyes period of time. So the thing we just passed a couple of weeks ago. In Spain, they don't really celebrate Christmas. They celebrate Reyes, which is the Epiphany. This is usually when we get our king's cake in France. But for them, it's where they get the gifts. And there was a girl in France that did something called Noël des startups, I believe, or Noël des startups, Noël de la French Tech, exactly. And what she did was trying to assemble all those French companies that were building awesome tech products and try to give them visibility and see how the audience, how the public could buy a made in France type of product for Christmas. And so I wanted to do something similar for the Spanish ecosystem. We did it one year. That was the first project we did together, but it was good.
See, I'm glad you got to explain that, because with my basic understanding of Spanish, I thought maybe this was the name for a gang for hackers. You know, like down in LA, they have the Silver Kings, and I'm thinking, who are these people? Actually, somebody asked. I'm skipping to a question that's being asked later on. Is on your social media, you reference to yourself as a hacker, and can't you get in trouble for promoting yourself as a hacker?
That's a really good question. This is what I would have thought as well when I had started, because for me, yes, a hacker sounds like someone that will get into a bank and rob data, rob money, move money around. I'll say there are different types of hackers, and of people that do bad stuff, like I just described. People that do good stuff in terms of security, like they find some holes in some softwares, and then they work with the company to solve those issues, and they get what we call a bug bounty. So if you want to try, if you're good at finding security issues, finding bugs, and not exploiting them, but like potentially see the harm of it, you should check out bug bounty programs. And this is a way to make money as a student. But the hacker word here in this case is more a way that people describe themselves here as someone that can move around and understand how to assemble things quickly and have this hacker spirit And I think that was really something that became popular as a term by Zuckerberg. Sadly now by Zuckerberg, but early on in Facebook, that was what they were advertising for, the hacker way. It doesn't have to look good, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll find a way to hack things together. And so it's kind of a positive thing now.
Right.
Well, at least I want to see it positive.
Okay, yeah. No, I see that because, just linguistically speaking, hacking is basically taking a hatchet at something and tearing it down. Whereas now,
yeah, it doesn't have to be programming.
It's building something.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Now I've got and this is again from Jeremy and Anthony, and we're moving into Typeform stuff. For the Typeform platform, when you talk about strategic integration with Intercom, Aircall, Slack, or your LinkedIn profile, is it difficult to keep a stable structure of the platform while making it evolve?
That's an awesome question, and it's a story of every single company here in everywhere in the world of how much you have to evolve as a technology to enable things for the future, and how much of this will give you an advantage compared to your competitors. And so for us, we are not a technical product. Right? We're actually the opposite. We want people to be able to solve surveys and create surveys on their own without any coding knowledge. But we have this API part that lets us connect with other things. And the things that we can do today are great, but they're limited. So if you want to go beyond and if you want to enable more use cases for our users, we need to add more features, and we need to be aware of the things we lack and the things we need. And so, yeah, while we're building those integrations, we learn about what we're missing, so we know what would be the plan in the future and where we could improve. Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, the struggle here is making sure that whatever you add doesn't take anything back from the current users that are currently using a platform. And if you take something back, make sure there's a plan for it, and you have another solution. And this is something we do every day. It's not something we say in 6 months we're going to do it. Every day we ship a new product. Every day, couple of dozen of times a day, the engineers are shipping new features to the product. And so we always take something out. We always add something else. And yeah, we have to make sure it's coherent and it stays in cohesion as well.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of the nefarious aspects of hacking, I suppose, if you use Typeform in the finance sector, what guarantees do you have that the data retrieved by the templates does not leak onto the internet?
I see some hackers are in this group that want to know if they can get money out of our bug bounty, because we do have one. And it's an interesting question because 3 years ago, we got affected by what we call a data breach. It meant that something was left open and people can get in and find data that has been collected through Typeform. And it was a mistake that we had in our security system for us, like the way you...
Yeah, somebody saw that. I guess they asked about this later on, so that'll answer the question. Go ahead. What happened there?
Yeah. No. Yeah. So we had a security issue. People could have access to this. And so we had to inform our users that, hey, we have to be, whenever this happens, you have to be transparent and say, like, we failed you, but we now put the things in place to make this better. So we are not at a level where we are certified specifically on all the things needed to be used in the finance industry. So we're not taking bank transactions or anything like this, but for some type of data, it's totally fine to use us. But we don't recommend to use us for collecting social security number. We don't recommend to use us for collecting passport photos or things like this. It's okay, you can do it, but that's something you do on your own. In terms of security, otherwise, we have implemented encryption and to make sure that no one else could have access to the data. And so if they have access to this, then they need the key to decrypt it. and then obviously we added a lot of security layers and make sure the connection is secured. But that's, again, something that has to be improved every single day as we find new issues.
Cool. A question from Luca and Quentin is, it goes a little bit to what you were speaking about, but basically, what is the part of your job that you find the most challenging day to day? It can be, you know, exciting, challenging. I mean, challenges are good, but
I'll tell you was the part that's really exciting for me. I'm an engineer, but my role is not really an engineering role. It's a bit of everything. So I get to code, but that's, depending on the week, that could be 60% of my time. Other weeks can be only 20%. But I also get to write. So I get to write tutorials. So if you're like, no, I get to write, and I'll tell you this later. I get to write. I get to talk to the customer. I get, sorry. All right, Rebecca played with my wife played with her phone, and she connected some reggaeton music into the Bluetooth stuff. So let me get this. All right, so I can hear you now. So I get to code, I get to write, I get to speak to customers, I get to talk with engineers on like things that could be improved in the product. I get to be involved in discussions with the sales team to make them seal a deal. I like be in the call with the sales team and be like, yeah, if you have any questions technically, come talk to me. So I get to do all those type of things. And this is where I thrive. And this is why I didn't go into a regular engineering career where you spend your whole day coding. And this is something I want to emphasize on students right now is like, there's so many jobs you can have in the tech industry. It's not because you're studying computer science now that you're going to be an engineer and you're going to spend all your time programming. You can do many other things. And so for me, for example, I realized being here the first time as an intern, as a software engineer intern, that the thing where I was the most happy in, it was when I was a social person. So going to meet up, giving talks, going to conferences, speak with people, hear their stories, share stories, hear how I can help. And I found the job that let me do this.
There's actually a question at some point in the coming up, which relates to your meetup, and tell us about the motivation behind it and the benefits that you get from having. It's 800. You have 800 members now.
Yes. Well, we kind of stopped because of the pandemic. But I think it's a normal thing to have on whatever passion you have. So you're into chess, there's a chess club. You're into knitting, there's a knitting club. And more if you're in school right now. I remember when I was at school, there were clubs for all types of passions. So it's natural that you will meet with others that have the same passion, and you get to talk about this. You get to talk about what's new in the industry. You get to talk about what are the best practices, who are the leaders, and what is the inspiration. And that on every type of passion. And there's specifically for programming and computer science, because this is a place where people discover new things and discover how others are doing it. So I feel there's an interesting thing there is that companies, people are willing to share their experience for others to learn. So I like to go to meetups where I get to hear how Twitter is doing the infrastructure. I like to go see how a small startup is building a whole open source project that is being used by many other companies, and I want to hear how they was built, how they deal with the community aspect of things. And then there's whenever you feel that there's a community that would need a space like this and it doesn't exist, then you can become this organizer, this leader that'd be like, yeah, I'll make the space for it, and I will gather people around this idea, and slowly we'll have a snowball effect of it was only 5 people in a bar, now it's 15 people in a big room, and now it's a conference, and now it's 3 days. Like, you have a lot of stories around those things.
And you get to interact with people all across the, tech industry, small companies, big companies. You've worked in both. Any notable differences between working for a small startup shop and a big company? I guess the snack bar is better. I don't know.
No, there's something in the Valley that's called the golden handcuff, right? You probably heard that is you work for a big company, you work for a Google, you work for a Facebook, and actually the conditions are too good for you to leave. The salary is good, the what we call the perks. So all the things that come around the work, you get the nice bars, the nice salad, you get the massage, you get the nice campus, you get all kinds of stuff that come with it. And because you're too comfortable, it's hard to make a move somewhere else. And some companies are aware of this. Then whenever they interview someone that used to be at Google, that used to be at Facebook, it's hard to make them move if they're interested by this. There are many other reasons, but it's hard to make they move. So sometimes even bigger companies have better conditions. But for sure, personally, why I like startups and why I like companies like this is because you get to be early on in a team, and you get to see the product evolves, and you get to see the impact you have. So when I was here the first time, I was an intern, but I was only the third engineer in the company. In whatever line of code I was writing, it had an impact on the clients who can sign. It had an impact on how the business was growing, and had an impact on the next person we will hire, because thanks to a contract, we'll hire more people. And eventually, when you leave the company, you're like, okay, I joined, we were 10, now we're 50. We already did a lot of work. I went through an acquisition. So the company I worked for before Typeform, it was called 3Scale. We got acquired by Red Hat. And so when I joined, we were 20. When we got acquired, we were 50. So it's not like a big change, but we got acquired by a company that was 12,000 people. And so the impact is not the same.
Right. There's actually, it was coming up on the list. If you could tell us about Red Hat and what you did there. What's the story with Red Hat?
Well, now Red Hat is part of IBM, so that's another thing. But I only got to see a really, really tiny part of Red Hat because our stuff was really around web services, APIs, whereas Red Hat is so many brands, so many projects. But the good thing about Red Hat, if you're interested by this type of company, is like they're an open source company. They do a lot of stuff in the open source, and they can fund some of your project if you have an idea. So you had a lot of people that were just a team of 3, and they're like, oh, we should do a project for the Java community to run their microservices. And people were giving a budget. And it was like, okay, you'll have a couple of years to try, and then we'll see, and we'll evaluate if you do it again. But it was a good company to give you the opportunity to do this. And the other thing that was interesting for Red Hat, they were really into the enterprise world. So when we say enterprise, we talk about the huge companies, the car manufacturers, the banks, the shipping companies, because the infrastructure is at a different level than if you're making your pizza delivery app.
You were talking about different projects. I've got some questions here from Alexandre, Raphael, Tierno, and Fezat. So a little bit more general, but do you have a favorite pet project that you remember that that stands out as your favorite?
And I will be philosophical here. I will tell you the one that I haven't made yet. No, nice. There's one I really liked because it got a bit of hype. It was 2 years ago, there was a big solar eclipse.
They're going to want to hear about that. So yes, go ahead.
You tell me. You tell me if I said too much.
No, this is good. No. I mean, if it got some hype, you did something right.
I might level. So it's not crazy. But so 3 years ago, there was a big solar eclipse in the US. It was the first in a long time that could be seen across the country from the west to the east. So everybody had a chance, couple of hours drive to see a full eclipse. And as a kid, I remember the 11th of August 1999, I think, which was the one in France. That was one of the latest one in France, a big one. And I remember the impact it had. And we were in San Francisco. In San Francisco, we were not on the 100% zone, but I was curious to see if there were events organized around to gather with other stargazers, like people that like to watch at the sky and be nerdy about this. And on the NASA website, they had a map with Google Map where you can see all different points and all the stuff. And I found that it was a bit fuzzy to search around and find all your local events. And I'm sure there were more events than just the ones that were on the NASA website. So I built an app and say, now it's a very timely app. This app is useless now, but it's an app that was useful for the 2 weeks leading to that time, where you will put your address, your city where you are right now, and it will find around you the events that were there. And yeah, this app got featured on Product Hunt, got a lot of upvotes there. It got featured on Lifehacker. Like I discovered, because I ran out of the credits that I had to use the APIs, that people were using it. And yeah, it was a fun project. I got to learn a new programming language as well. I got to discover Vue.js. And yeah, I got to ride the wave with it. So it was great.
Very cool. Your embed cookies project, what was the environment and tools that you used?
It's I don't, if it's what I'm thinking about, it's a pretty small, tiny project. I think it's a really an example of what you can do with Typeform. The idea is that if people are watching, seeing a form, you want to record that they've seen this form and you don't show it more than once. And so that's an example I share with other developers that have the same issue. And so it's using a technology. It's using a service called Glitch, and I recommend to all of you to go try this because it provides you an online ID where you can edit the code. And as you're making changes, it deploys those changes. So you don't have to think about deploying your server, deploying your app. It does that automatically for you. And it was using JavaScript because that's what I'm using the most. And this is the technology that will be used by people because it's a web thing.
I've got, okay, you covered Red Hat. This is good, personal project. Going back to your life as a student, why did you, you went to UTBM?
Yes.
And so what did you have family after China? Did you move back to that area? How did you end up there?
I'm originally, the place in France where I spend most of my time is a city called La Rochelle on the west coast of France. And yeah, so totally opposite to Burgundy.
On the other side, yeah.
On the other side. And at that time, there was no TGV. So it was taking me 10 hours to go to Belfort. So I was definitely not going back every weekend like my friends that were originally from that region, or they were originally from Alsace. So I spent a lot of time in Belfort. Why I went there? It's because I knew about the UT, so University of Technology group, the one in Compiègne, the one in Troyes, and the one in Belfort. And the thing that I really like is that you, and I guess that's for me, what worked for me is like, you get to be an engineer, but not only focusing on the technical work. So they had a lot of emphasis on the foreign languages, on philosophy, on theater. My best grades in engineering school were on theater and arts. And as an engineer, I think it's a gift to have the time and the chance to do something else than just technology. It will help you discover and apprehend the world in a different way. So you're not only a technical person.
That actually ties into a question which I was really touched by, because I think it's a very, I don't want to say honest, but not fragile either, but I find it touching, and I'll tell you the question. What can advise students who are coming up with motivational issues and fear that they may have a lack of vision or higher ambition? It's a difficult time right now to be a student.
Yep.
There's not the social life that students usually enjoy. There's
Yeah.
there's well, there's an economic downturn. It's easy to be gloomy about the future of the industry. So, and I know you to be an enthusiastic guy with many different interests. So give us some of that mojo a little bit, just some
Yeah.
positive vibes.
There's definitely a space for hope, and this is what I was telling you as well. On like, if you don't know exactly what's going to be your job title yet, it's totally normal because this job title doesn't exist. When I started computer science, I didn't start computer science. I started the class prepa inside the school, maths and physics. I knew I wanted to do programming. I knew I wanted to be into computer science, but I had no idea what would be my job, right? And we have the thing that we all dream as a kid, was like, we're going to be programming games, but in the end, not so many people do programming games. So it's most likely that this job will be either invented between the time you finish your studies, or just later on, or that's something you will find where your skills are useful somewhere else. There are many shapes of engineers that do different things. If your thing is not being 100% into programming, it could be around education. We've seen a lot of people that have these skills and they want to transmit it. They want to pass it around to other folks to share this so they empower others. We've seen this help people around you. I mean, right now, if you feel that's what you're missing, this is the social aspect that you miss, it's a good time to find how you can help your local community. We've seen a lot of people getting their skills together to build small apps to help the other small businesses. Not too far from where you're studying in Chamonix, there's a family that were selling fruits on a market, and obviously the markets have been closed, and their son that lives across in Canada, he just put up a Typeform where they can accept payments and still continue running their business and do deliveries in the valley. So it doesn't have to be crazy complicated technical stuff either. But with your vision of the things that are possible, you're bringing as an engineer, as someone that understands technology, you bringing the yes to the table, I think. A lot of people will have, it will be awesome, la, 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 if we can do this, if we can do that. And they'll be like, well, yeah, we miss an engineer. We miss someone that knows those things. And you're this person that say, I know, I can do this, I can help you. And you can help at different levels, small to get started, something that will scale, something that will run with millions of people. You can do all these different phases and adapt the solution to the people you have in front. So I think this is where there's hope. You will always have people to help, and you can find those people to help right now, just to give you the motivation on the project right now.
And, just from, I guess, some experience and history, there's many examples of people banging their heads against a wall, and they just couldn't get anywhere, and they decided, screw it, I'm going to go for a walk. And just by changing their perspective or applying a little bit of self-care, just saying, this is not good for me, I need to breathe some fresh air and do something different. That's where the click came from. The light bulb goes on, and all of a sudden you're okay.
That works for any type of issues you may have. But programming is a specific thing because you get so in it, you get so focused in it. It's okay to take a break and go around the block. Totally.
So almost necessary to have an outlet or something kind of diametrically opposite and different, and get your head out of it. I get it.
And that works for your career choice as well. I understand that like studying sounds boring sometimes. I've done a lot of stuff in school where like no one is using this right now. No, I'm learning stuff that is not useful. Why I'm learning this programming language that is too old. But it's not. This is not what you're learning in school. You're learning how to learn. I think this is the part that's mostly interesting, and the fact that you're going to be learning so many things as you are on the job, because without this muscle memory of how to learn things and to be curious, you're going to learn also how to be curious. So if you train this, that makes you that will make you less frightened by what's coming.
Very good. I've got just a few more, and we're going into some specifics. 2019, there was a conference in Francisco. You talked about no code. Can you tell us a
yes.
little bit more about that?
And you see, this is where I have a lot of hope as well, because there are more people that get into building solutions and they don't have specifically the technical knowledge, but because there are tools that are made accessible to those concepts, then people can just hack around, connect things together, and build a more complex system. And so the project I was telling you about in Chamonix, the person that does this, he knows a bit of code, but he's not a programmer. But he was able to help his family sustain an economic activity during the crisis by connecting Typeform, that was just taking orders, Stripe to accept payments, and a Google spreadsheet where they will see all the orders. And what they will do, then the parents that never used the technology or really barely used it, now they have their money into their bank account thanks to Stripe, where before every single penny that they own and earn, they touch it because it's a cash economy. And they have this spreadsheet where every week they can go through the list, know what everybody has ordered, and that has changed completely their business. And this whole thing doesn't need any line of code. It's just connecting things together. And so this is just an example, but we see people doing a lot of crazy other ideas around no code. There are a set of tools that are, so Airtable is one, Zapier is in the middle that does the connection between tools. I really encourage you to take a look at this, not really to be in the spirit of, those people are going to take my job, but more there are so many other opportunities to help others. And this is my passion at Typeform, right? We make surveys. Surveys are boring. Asking a first name, last name question is boring. But the usage that people have of it and how you empower them through this tool, this is very powerful. And to build those tools, you will need engineers in the end. So see this as an opportunity.
Actually, so somebody asks, it's Guillaume and Murtada as it pertains to Typeform. Can you talk about the main fields, clients that you collect data for?
They do all kinds of stuff. So this is what I like as well. So you have someone that have this on their website and say, do you want to contact me? Just leave your details and I will reach out. You have some people that use it internally. So for us, for example, we use it to, if you want to reach out IT, when you have an issue with your laptop, this is how you file a ticket. We have people that use it. There are a couple of beauty brands that use it, wellness brands that use it for product recommendation. There's a really interesting product team in the US for curly hair. Not my problem, but it's very hard to take care of your curly hair, and there are not many brands that exist for this. So this woman decided to start this business and to offer her products. She asks you to take a test, a quiz actually, where you say which type of hair do you have? Do you have any allergies, any problems, blah, blah, blah. And as you're going through this whole thing, at the end it says, this is the pack that's for you. That's exactly what you need. You don't need to go around the website and search for things. We know that what you need exactly is this. And this is made through a Typeform, the recommendation. So we see people doing all kinds of different things.
I have a question pertaining to AI. How important is it in your work now? Or, I mean, do you have more general thoughts about what's happening in the near future regarding AI?
I'll tell you where AI is in my world. I see self-driving car all over the cities in San Francisco, and there's still a driver because they're still in learning mode. But you see them very often. The first time you see one, you're like, oh, wow, this is weird. And now there's like many companies doing this. So I see this every day. But in terms of the Typeform and the company, we also use it for different things. We don't use it to predict the future. We don't use it to do anything crazy, but we use it in a very practical way. We use it, for example, to see and detect when someone is trying to do a phishing activity using our form. We have a free product, so people may use it to harm others. And steal their data, the credit card number, the password, these type of things. And so instead of waiting on someone to report to us that this is a harmful form, we try to detect and see what are the common behaviors of people that are doing this type of activities, so we can stop them early on. This is a really concrete use case of it.
So you're using red flags and
yes, you create a form, it goes through a bunch of machine learning algorithm that we have developed, and we say, okay, looks good, or it looks fishy, let's take a look. And there's a level of confidence, so you know if it has to be a manual look or if it's something that you can trust, and you say no.
That's awesome. One more question, and then I have a question that I guess I'll be asking everybody who participates in this little chat series. But is there any particular domain in tech, in Silicon Valley at the moment, which really impresses you with the way they're evolving? I guess, perhaps anything with energy. I mean, I'm putting together that the richest dude in the world is a guy who basically is making really powerful batteries that don't take a lot of space.
Yes, so this guy is doing some crazy stuff for sure. But there's some other stuff that I think are interesting. I don't think it's really on an industry. Like we see awesome products getting created often. There's stuff that are made to connect more people. So right now there's a whole thing around Clubhouse, which is like an app where you create a room for people to interact and have kind of a show, but anybody could be a guest on the show. It's technology-wise is not very crazy. It's easy to bring people in a room and have a voice implemented, but the impact it has on communities and the impact it has on sharing content and the media industry, I think that's very powerful. I see things, but this is not a Valley company. It's actually an Australian company called Canva. They're an online image editor. And again, the technology is not crazy. Like changing images, it's quite normal. It's a table stake, like it has been going on for many years. But they were able to put this in the browser, so it made it accessible to hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people around the world. And now everybody's a designer. And that has a huge impact on a lot of different people. So I will look in this type of companies that, invest in, turn people, empower people.
I actually know of Canva. I think when we get a food truck going, we'll get our logo from Canva or some of that stuff. So then the closing question, Nicolas, and thanks again for doing this and spending time with us. And we're going to ask this to every contributor. Is there something that you wish you knew when you moved on from being a student into professional life? Or in other words, any advice for graduates entering the workforce?
That's something I should have thought about, but I'll say there's I don't know what I will tell my younger self. I think I was pretty down to earth as a kid or as a student. I knew what was going on in the world, but for sure the thing that I keep, and I don't want to move away from my experience, I was not afraid. And the experience I want to tell you in this is the first year I moved to the States. I was an exchange student in Minnesota. I was the only French-speaking person on campus, so we were maybe 3. So I was speaking English every single day, and I didn't care. I didn't care of all the mistakes. I didn't care if my friends that studied in international schools, they had all these they were internationals. They were from other countries than an English-speaking country, but because of all the education, they've been to other places. Spoke better than me. I was the Frenchie, and that was my character, and this is how people recognize me around campus. But that helped, and I maintained not being afraid thing to always put up new challenges. I went to a startup weekend in a 2 hours drive from the city of the campus. I didn't know anybody there. I met friends there. And eventually this is how I went to the next step, where I decided to spend spring break in San Francisco. So instead of getting drunk in Cancun and do whatever you do in the movies, I went for 2 weeks vacation in San Francisco with the goal of finding an internship. And there I print out my business cards and I went to talk to every single person that I could meet. I went to all the meetups. I contacted the alumni and I was like, yeah, I'm this little kid. I want to make sure in 3 months, in 6 months, I have this internship and I want to be back here. Let's do things. And so it sounds silly, but because you're not afraid of things, you can do silly stuff. And as you grow up, you're starting to lose this innocence and be more afraid of consequences. So don't be afraid. There's nothing. On those things, it's hard to lose anything.
That's awesome. I think that's all right. No fear. Very cool. We'll narrow it down to 2 words. That's great. Well, thanks for doing this with us. I'm sure, and I'm sorry if we didn't cover all the questions, but these guys really got into your LinkedIn and your history and Typeform and all that, and hopefully we answered most of the questions. So that's awesome. Thanks again for doing this, and I can't wait to see you in real life next time.
Next time, yes. And if you know where to find me, if you have more questions, I'll be happy to connect. Cheers.
Very cool. Thanks.